Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Hey, that's us. Thank you for joining us. And happy Thanksgiving, one and all. We are, as we come on the air, the day before Thanksgiving. And, of course, we're always very thankful to have not only our wonderful listeners that keep things going, but these wonderful guests that continue to, for some reason, agree to come on the program with Shayne and I. Shayne, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Good. Are you all ready for Thanksgiving?
Sort of. we got to drive this evening, so we've got a destination.
And yet you're still here.
Yeah, but I made my cheesecakes.
Oh,
so
did you bring any here?
No.
Oh,
no. I was told not to cut into them. We'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
But I will have to do that at some point because I've got a recipe that everybody seems to enjoy.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
It takes 3 hours to make them.
Wow.
It's quite a process. But if you do one, you might as well do two because the amount of work it's not it's about the same. So.
Well, if you're going to do two, you might as well do like three.
Do three, and then I would bring that into the station.
Yeah. Kind of saw right through that, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are going to be taking a couple of days off here, although a lot of our programming will remain in place. And, in order to kind of unscramble all this, I thought I'd go right to the top and get the president of Annunciation Radio on the air with us. And Dave Vacheresse is more than happy to come. Well, he said he was more than happy to come on. I hope that's true. Dave, welcome.
I thought you called me in for a meeting. Okay. Sounds good.
We're having a meeting on the air.
And I'm intrigued, Shayne. So cheesecake. Cheesecake. Oh, this is your cheesecake.
Yeah, it's cheesecake.
And it made me think of my specialty. I don't know if you've ever had my specialty.
I don't know.
The macaroni and cheese that used to be $1 a box, I think it's now $8 a box. But in any case, and with the powdered cheese.
Yeah.
Cooked exactly according to the directions. Then you take some of the square cheesy crackers. What are those called?
Oh,
Cheez-Its?
Cheez-Its.
Yeah, that's it.
Take the Cheez-Its and you crumble them up and you put them on top.
Ooh,
nice.
Man,
that sounds
fabulous.
That's
horrible.
Awesome.
Yeah. 8 minutes of total prep time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. 8 minutes from out of the box into your mouth.
That's pretty impressive.
And then you imagine if you combine that with cheesecake of an excellent quality, you will have eaten at least one really high quality food. The other one is garbage, but it sure tastes good while you're eating it.
Now,
sounds cheesy to me. I like
now,
cheese.
Unfortunately, my youngest daughter, Keely, would probably disagree. She does not like her macaroni and cheese to be tampered with. It's got to be, she's just now starting to use heavy whipping cream because it's creamier.
Yeah.
But she doesn't like anything added to it. And it's got to be by the box.
And I've had the honor of eating at your house on occasion, usually unannounced. I just show up. Hey, isn't it dinner time? But I will say this. Always excellent food there. Both you and Christy are wonderful cooks, and you in particular really take pride and a lot of time in your preparation and in your food.
I do
always
enjoy
fabulous.
it, yeah.
Keely is eating the macaroni and cheese that I just described without the crackers.
She
likes it out of the box.
Out of the box.
With the powdered cheese.
You do not tamper with the recipe. Yeah. Well, except for that, like I said.
Now she's taking the heavy cream.
Heavy whipping cream because she discovered that it's creamier, but you do not put anything in there. I said, you can put... you can put some sort of meat in there. You hear people mix it. And she's, no.
She's sitting there with tenderloin in front of her, eating the mac and cheese.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Just straight out of the box.
She's a purist. What can you say? Can't argue with that.
And absolutely,
gotta love it.
And what a disappointment too, because like you said,
you're
tenderloin.
You're
it's just
taking
like
hours to prepare.
Yeah.
All right. So remember, we got to save 8 minutes for Keely's mac and cheese.
That's right. On the Thanksgiving table, for dinner, what's on it?
Oh, well, I know there's probably going to be mac and cheese somewhere at our, somebody's going to have to do a special mac and cheese to satisfy Keely. But as far as I know, it's going to be the standard turkey, and all of the standard, the typical fixings. Again, this is not our house. We're headed to Indy, and this is going to be Christy's aunt's home. and the family, all the families converging there for Thanksgiving.
And do people bring dishes, or is it all?
Well, I'm taking the cheesecake.
Oh, okay.
Christy was up late the other night and made another apple pie.
Oh, nice.
And then there was some sort of a roll that she made. It looks like a log, and it's rolled with some filling in it. I forgot the name of it, but
it's called Delicious.
It's called Delicious,
yeah.
but that's our role is to bring the desserts.
Nice.
And you notice he said another apple pie.
Another.
Because, again, we go back a couple nights ago, I showed up at their house unannounced. And while we were talking around the kitchen island, I ate the apple pie that was there.
Well, they left it laying around.
Half of that is true. I did eat the apple pie, and it was
defense,
absolutely delicious. Yeah.
And then now when you show up like that, I don't know if you're listening at the door, but do you ever hear a voice say, "What's he doing here?"
Usually it's Christy saying, "Not him again. Not him again. Didn't we just feed him last night?" No.
I'm sure that everyone is always thankful when you drop by, Dave. Yeah. So on the Thanksgiving table, cranberries or cranberry sauce?
Oh, I don't know.
So
neither for me.
Yeah, as far as preference, I'm not sure. I think we've had cranberry in the past, and I would say cranberry is not the sauce.
It's one of those things, though, that's obligatory on the Thanksgiving table, whether you like it or not, whether people eat it or not. It has to be there.
Okay, so if we're talking about the obligatory food,
yes.
What about the candied yams with marshmallows on top?
Yeah, gotta have that.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't enjoy that either. I mean, I don't. Look, I'll be honest with you. A lot of the traditional Thanksgiving meal does not appeal to me. Turkey does not appeal to me, for one thing. So that's a good starting point. I'm a ham guy, so thank goodness ham is included in the traditional Thanksgiving meal. So I eat the ham. I don't eat the turkey. I do love some stuffing now.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well-made stuffing. Absolutely fabulous. But a lot of the other candied yams, I have no attraction to much of that.
I've got a great stuffing recipe.
Oh, let me ask you about the stuffing, though, because do you make it on the side or do you stuff it in the turkey and bake it?
On the side. On the side, okay. It gets baked, and it's at least the one that I prepared. I usually find an interesting recipe, and then I like doctoring it up. And the way that this one turned out, I've impressed quite a few people with it. So I've made it a few times now, and it's very, very tasty.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is, Dave, we'll delay our departure tonight. Come on over, and I'm going to make you some stuffing and some other delicacies.
Well, as luck would have it, you both get off the air at the same time.
Just follow you over.
Writes itself, doesn't it?
No, I'm looking for it. Eileen has been working all day today to prepare our Thanksgiving meal for tomorrow, so looking forward to that at our house as well. So good stuff.
So do you have any company?
No,
just the two of you?
My mother, I went and I got my mother. So my mother is down here, and our son Isaac is here, and then Eileen and I. So it'll be the four of us.
Yeah.
It'll be fabulous. It'll be in holidays like that. It's the same people that were there for dinner last night. So it's still big, It's
but
still
the menu's different.
That's right.
The menu's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's fabulous. We've got some special things lined up for the day.
Thanksgiving that allows you to come together and really be thankful for things.
Yeah. Now, you, Mr. Finn, you and I have talked. You've got a big gathering on Saturday with all the kids and all the kiddos.
We'll all gather up at my daughter's house.
Yeah, all the kids and all the grandkids.
Yeah, we'll all be there together, which is a blessing in itself. Mm-hmm. And on Thanksgiving tomorrow ourselves, I don't think we figured that out yet.
There are really no plans.
No particular plan. We'll have
you'll have a
Thanksgiving meal together, but we're not going to duplicate the menu that we're going to have on Saturday.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So.
See, and I would never want Eileen to know this, but we went out to a restaurant, we being the staff of Annunciation Radio, for a Thanksgiving meal today in celebration of Thanksgiving, and I ordered the traditional Thanksgiving meal.
You didn't
without
tell
the
me
turkey
about that.
Yeah, that's right.
I told you we weren't supposed to tell Shayne.
We're included on that email thread.
I forgot the memo.
It's very good. Well, welcome to Food Talk here on Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio. Dave Vacheresse in studio with Shayne Stanfield and I.
Is anybody hungry yet?
Yeah.
No,
I was hungry
I'm
before
still
I
full
came
from
in.
lunch. Man, are you kidding me? Now, we just came off of a wonderful week of Sharathon. And talk about Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Wow. What a fabulous experience it was to hear from people calling in and sending messages in.
Oh, wow.
And all these wonderful priests that came in. And we just want to take some time to express our thankfulness, our gratitude for everybody stepping up and really taking this seriously, knowing how important Catholic radio is now in our current culture. Seems like every year it gets more and more important.
And isn't that true? Obviously, we want to thank our listeners who have been so generous. And I thank the Lord for stirring the hearts of so many to participate, particularly our priests, as well as Knights of Columbus, who helped us with an entire day. But also just for the fact that the Lord allows us to continue to do this. Look, we're not doing this for our own glory, and we can't inspire or stir the heart of anyone to be generous to us. So we have to assume that it's the Lord doing that thing. And I'm just thankful that he's going to allow us to do it for another 6 months. I love the model of Annunciation Radio because we're funded 6 months at a time. And if ever it just fell flat and nothing was raised, we'd go off the air. And I would just assume that the Lord would say, that's enough. Either he wants us to do this or he doesn't. And since it is for him, that remains up to him. And if he allows us to do it, then I have to give thanks for that. And I give great, great thanks for those who listen to that stirring of the heart. I tell the story. I've told it a couple of times before, but what is important is our yes on everything, right? Each and every day when the Lord invites us to do things. And this was really brought home to me when I was listening to the chairman of the board and CEO of EWTN, Michael Warsaw, telling a story about Mother Angelica that I was not aware of and had never heard before when he was speaking at a conference maybe last year. And he said that she relayed the story that after her time of managing EWTN radio, or EWTN television radio was over, her day-to-day management was over, and she had gone to the monastery. She told the story that she was in conversation with the Lord about EWTN and the blessing, telling the Lord, thank you for allowing her to be a part of it, for calling her into this ministry. And Mother Angelica said, as she was having this conversation with the Lord said to her, you weren't the first one I asked.
Wow.
In fact, there were 3 before you.
Wow.
You were the first one to say
yes. Oh, wow.
So she was not his first choice, but she was the first one to say yes. And who knows who the first 3 were? It's unimportant, completely unimportant now. We know what Mother Angelica's yes built, and we know that we should do the same thing. We should be in the habit of saying yes. What is it? When we say yes, it makes the next yes easier. When we say no, it makes the next no more likely.
Yeah.
We've got to be in the habit of saying yes to the Lord and saying yes quickly, by the way. I mean, discerning, but particularly those things that are clearly him, just say yes quickly and move forward to the next one.
So our half-year operating goal is
$250,000,
$250,000.
Yeah, accomplished.
So let's recap the success story of last week. We've met or exceeded our goal.
Yeah, and we have a $250,000 campaign in the spring and in the fall. It takes about a little over $500,000 to run this organization for the year. And so we do that through campaigns in the spring and the fall. Part of that is the on-air portion of our fundraising, but we had already raised $120,000 of that $250,000 before we ever went on the air, thanks to all of our monthly donors and some generous gifts that had come in before that. The rest of it we raised either on the air and through the mail in the last couple of weeks.
Wow!
So hit that goal, hit our on-air portion of the goal, right before we went off the air, and then...
And that would have been Friday at the end of the...
Just on Friday, between 5 and 6 o'clock.
Wow.
We surpassed that on-air portion of our goal, and then the mail kept coming in, and we met our overall goal of the $250,000.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And so the nice thing, again, is we are funded for the next 6 months. We can only do that through your generosity. Now we go back to work, and we do the one thing that we've promised everyone we will do. Bring you wonderful, excellent programming from our program partners, EWTN and Ave Maria Radio, and then good quality, the best quality local programming given to you actually by Annunciation Radio, who produces more local programming for our local audience than any other Catholic radio station in the U.S. That's 500 stations. We produce more local programming for and by our local listening audience than any other station in the country.
So that, for the listeners, that's pretty impressive because our budget is relatively small, considering that we're considering that we're operating literally five transmitters.
Yeah, 5 stations.
Producing,
in excess of 20 hours of programming per week, probably, with weekend programming, 30 hours of programming per week.
So folks should be pretty proud of the mission that we have going on here, being able to operate in such a well, I wouldn't say a shoestring budget, but it's not large.
Well, there are a few people doing a lot of stuff, and look, it's attributable beyond our Lord and Our Lady. It really does come down to one person, and that's Mr. Finn. It's Mr. Finn, and we all know it. We dance around it, but
all right,
it's true.
Here's your $5.
It's Mr. Finn.
We have a very small staff, but a very dedicated staff, and really, whatever it takes to get something done is what gets done. So that's really gratifying to be a part of this. I've been over here full-time since 2014, and then kind of helping from time to time before that. But to see, to be able to be gifted with that ability to really dedicate your time, your very livelihood to a ministry such as this or an apostolate such as this is really gratifying. And I'm really grateful for that opportunity because a lot of people don't have that opportunity. You have to go to work. And then, so you can have time to practice your faith life and your personal life and so forth. But it all intertwines when you're working in the fields here.
And it's good to note. I mean, it's good to keep up with the progress. So 4 or 5 years ago, we had 4 to 5 hours of local programming every week. Now we have 4 to 5 hours of local programming every day.
Yeah.
And so, and we've not increased staff to do that, by the way.
No, we have not.
We have the same size staff doing that work, and we are very, very thankful to be doing it and thankful for the support to be able to continue to do it.
Well, for our donors, and I guess this is what I was alluding to previously, I mean, they're really getting a really big bang for the buck. I mean, for what is contributed to here, for every 6 months, we do a Sharathon twice a year. We're able to do, or we have been able to do more than we've ever had.
Yeah.
In the past, and I think that's pretty impressive. I mean, what a treasure that the Diocese of Toledo has, that we have a Catholic radio station here, operating 5 stations, and with such a number, so many hours of our own programming. I mean, again, you said that this exceeds over 500 stations.
No other station in the United States of America matches our
impressive.
output from a local perspective.
Yeah,
not one of them.
But what's really wonderful when you think about it, the cost to run this operation, both all the electricity bills at the various transmitter sites, all the equipment that goes into that, maintaining everything and so forth. Obviously, those costs keep increasing. So when you consider $250,000 for half a year or $500,000 for a year of operating, it is really pretty good when you consider if we had no local programming and all network programming, for example, it would cost $500,000 a year to put that on. So it doesn't just because we add more local programming doesn't mean we increase costs. I mean, obviously, we need some studio equipment in order to be able to do shows such as this, but that's not an ongoing cost. So your generosity really is spreading the word of God, and it's the word that is heard by people who need to hear it right where they are at that moment. And we don't know what form that's going to come in. It might be one of our local programs. It might be one of our public service announcements that we run.
Right.
It could be another phone caller that someone hears on the air, or something that David Andrews says, or something.
Oh, my goodness.
You never know where that inspiration is going to come from.
If you missed him today, listen to the
he was pretty
go to
awesome
the app,
today.
go to the website, listen to it on demand. He is so wonderful. I want to add this. What is the turkey's favorite dessert?
Oh, I forgot today's Wednesday.
Yeah. What is the turkey's favorite dessert?
You've stumped me.
Peach gobbler.
Peach gobbler, huh? Oh.
Yeah.
These aren't leftovers from this morning, are they?
No, that was in the
That
discard
was
pile.
that one didn't make it on the list today.
Oh, yeah, so you bring it to our show? Oh,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
But you've got more.
No, that was it. That's
We
all I
had,
had.
we had a wonderful guest this
Yeah.
morning on the morning show who brought us some really good jokes. And she's 7 years old, and she was just a joy to have in the studio. So,
wow.
Katrina, thank you for coming on the show and adding some actual humor.
Yeah, they
to
were
Hump
actually
Day
funny.
humor today. Yeah.
Hey, this one's true, and it's a truism. So both a truism and a chuckle. I mean, nothing refreshes my memory of what I need at the grocery store. Now, we're all doing this. Everybody's going to the grocery store right now. Hopefully you're writing lists, but many of us have been in that place where you go in the grocery store and you forget why you went there,
Every
right?
time I go.
Or what you're getting. You remember 3 items, but you forget number 4.
Yeah.
Nothing refreshes my memory of what I need at the grocery store like coming home from the grocery store.
Yeah.
That's when you remember, right?
Once you start putting stuff away, it's like, oh.
Not even on the way home, but when you arrive at home, oh, that's it, butter. Doggone it, I completely forgot.
And there's some kind of it's like a Murphy's Law thing that the most distance between you and the grocery store is where you're going to think of things that
Oh,
you
yeah.
get out
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
grocery
Yeah.
store.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually when it's when I get home and Eileen says, "Did you remember the oats?" No, I forgot the oats. Yeah, and not that we often buy oats. I don't know why that came to my mind, but oats.
Well, I do.
What do you do with an oat?
I do grocery shopping. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, but I found myself more often, at the local builder supply.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the
Yeah.
project. Let's just say the project. And that happens to me.
Yeah,
I
right.
go there with a list of stuff, and I go through up and down the aisles, get everything I need, and I get home, and it's like, oh, I forgot that. And then you make a trip.
I take
go back.
pictures. I write notes now because I'm exhausted from it. So I know I'm going to forget.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I want to give a little bit of a backstory here about you, Dave.
Yeah.
You spent many formative years with EWTN and with Mother Angelica, and you were there at the time. With shortwave,
Yeah.
and then
When it
also
launched,
on TV. But to be there at that time when these FM signals were becoming available,
Yeah.
and people were really going out on a limb to get a Catholic radio station on the air.
Yeah.
You were there to help them do that, raise the money for it, and hook them up with the programming, get everything squared away, and then on to the next one. You did that for countless stations.
Yeah, that was a pleasure of my life to be able to travel throughout the country, and we grew. Yeah, Catholic radio from 2011 until 16. So during those 5 years, grew from 100 stations to 500 stations. So yeah, there was a lot going on. And loved the opportunity to run EWTN Radio at that time, at that incredible time of growth. A lot of people involved in that growth, but yeah, I got to be involved myself. But I think, and that it was definitely a move of the Spirit, but it takes me back to another motherism, as it were. So Mother Angelica starts this shortwave radio station, and then at some point she gets the idea that she should be doing AM/FM radio stations. And in her mind, the first iteration of this is she and EWTN are going to own and operate these radio stations.
Wow.
So she says to a couple guys I know, I wasn't involved, and they're the ones who relayed this story, one of them, she sent a couple of guys who were associated with EWTN shortwave radio down to see a particular man down in Florida who had a lot of money. And I wouldn't say his name, but Domino's, just think Domino's, Tom Monahan. So, and who was very generous to Mother Angelica, fabulously generous to Mother Angelica. So she sends these two men down to Florida and says, ask him for $1 million. And her intention is she's going to take that $1 million and she's going to buy the first mother station in Birmingham, Alabama, FM station. So these two guys go down to Florida, they collect a check, and they come back and they hand it to Mother. And it's a check for $100,000. And Mother Angelica said, "Didn't I ask you to ask him for $1 million?" And they said, "Yeah, but he said he could not give the $1 million. $100,000 is all he could give." All he could give. Mother Angelica, by their count, ripped up the check.
Wow.
Not out of spite for him, because she loved him. She took it as a sign from the Lord that is not the way this was supposed to grow.
Wow.
So what she did, and she had asked him for the money specifically to buy a station. So she decided she was not going to buy a station, so she was not going to take the money for that. Believe me, she asked him for money for many other things, and she did not rip up those checks. But that's when this whole thing about growing in each of these communities by having local groups own and operate the stations sprang up. And it grew much more quickly than EWTN would have ever been able to grow a network of stations. Imagine EWTN owning and operating 500 Catholic radio stations. Imagine the staff that would be needed, the time that it would be needed to be able to grow a network like that. But when local people own and operate them, separate from EWTN operating them themselves, it was able to grow much, much, much more quickly.
It
was a much better model.
Fantastic business plan.
Yeah.
Because, you don't have the overhead of all of those stations, having to worry about fundraising at all these various stations, but because you'd still have to keep them on the air.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea, and for those of you that are listening that don't know, we get our feed, EWTN provides their feed free of charge. And, so if somebody wants to start up a Catholic radio station in their own area, they bear the cost of putting the station together, and at that point in time, then you have to worry about content. But EWTN picks up that end of it.
Yeah, and provides it for free. Now, again, buying a radio station is onerous. Raising the money for that could be difficult. But once you do that, EWTN is taking care of the most costly thing associated with most radio operations after that.
It's the production.
And that's the content.
Yeah.
So the content is free. So you get to concentrate on the one thing and let EWTN provide all the programming. And then, as Annunciation Radio did in its early years, absolutely brilliant, just carry EWTN while you're trying to raise that money and get the stations paid for. And then once you've done that, now you can begin to concentrate on local programming. Once your foundation has been built, your foundation of support has been built, which you get to do because EWTN brings their credibility, brings their reputation, and quite frankly, brings their fans to bear on that original cost associated with buying the stations. It's a beautiful marriage.
It's local Catholic radio serving the local community. It's a beautiful combination with all this wonderful programming that's available to us as well. Dave Vacheresse, our guest on Faith with Reasons. We're going to take a little bit of a break, come right back here on Annunciation Radio. Please stay tuned.
Join millions of mothers as we pray for loved ones who have left the practice of our Catholic faith. Millions of Monicas is not a support group but a prayer group. Join us at Christ the King Toledo the first and third Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. Learn more at millionsofmonicas.com or at millionsofmonicas@cktoledo.org.
A lot of people presume that organized religion is somehow shallow. After all, organized religions try to define God, to put him in a box, so to speak. And wouldn't a supreme being be more vast and undefinable than that? So they end up being attracted to a spirituality that's more, vague. But if you think about it, Catholics claim that God is love. And if God is love, wouldn't he want to stoop down to our level so that we could know him? Wouldn't he make himself understandable and definable for our sakes? Wouldn't love choose to become as approachable as an infant or as plain as bread so that we could draw near to him, know him, and touch him? You see, we Catholics didn't put God in a box. God put himself there for our sakes. And love would do nothing less. And there's nothing more vast and more profound or more beautiful than that. This is Chris Stefanik from reallifecatholic.com.
Courage, an apostolate of the Catholic Church, ministers to persons with same-sex attractions and their loved ones. They also have an outreach called Encourage, which ministers to relatives, spouses, and friends of persons with same-sex attractions. Endorsed by the Pontifical Council for the Family, our beloved John Paul II said of this ministry, "Courage is doing the work of God." Please visit the Courage website, couragerc.org, to learn more and find a Courage chapter near you.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons, here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shayne Stanfield Ronvin, and today we have President of Annunciation Radio, Dave Vacheresse, with us, shining light in the studio. We were discussing just prior to the break, basically what the startup process is like with these stations. Was pretty much the same with Annunciation Radio when it began. And that was pretty much your career, from the very beginning. Obviously, you were president of EWTN Radio, but then you moved on, and you were instrumental in helping open up many stations throughout the country. That pretty much became your thing.
Yeah, a builder. I enjoyed building the Catholic radio stations. And EWTN made me available for that, in fact. So that was another part that EWTN provided in the building of these radio stations, is they allowed me as their as their representative to go out for free and help groups, even like Annunciation Radio. I came here in the early, the beginnings of Annunciation Radio before it ever went on the air, and did a little fundraising, asking for money, parish presentations, that kind of thing. But that was duplicated all over the country, not just by me, but by a bunch of folks who are following that same model. And by far, the majority of those 500 stations were paid for in that way, not by big checks, but by small donations from a lot of people. I would say this, one of the first stations it wasn't one of the first, but one of the stations that I worked on after we had created this model and we were introducing it in various places, to get Catholic radio stations on the air, we went to this particular diocese and met with the bishop and said we had an opportunity to buy a station, we being myself from EWTN and the principal for the local group that wanted to bring the station on the air. Went and met with this bishop and said we have this station that's available for sale, and we gave him the dollar amount, and then I explained parish presentations to him, and I said this is how we pay for these stations. He said, I really want a Catholic radio station here, but I don't think I want you to go into the parishes to raise the money. And I just said to him, well, that's wonderful, but we'll have to go somewhere else, because this is the model we have. This is the model that works. We know if we do this, we can raise the money. If not, we don't have a model to raise it any other way. And so we'll just go on to the next opportunity. And he said, no, I really want a Catholic radio station here. Let me pray about it for a few days. So he did that. We got back together 3 days later, and he said, Dave, I've got really good news and really bad news. The bad news is I just cannot allow you to go into the parishes to raise the money. The good news is I'm going to write the check. The diocese is going to pay for the station in its entirety. And boy, were we overjoyed.
Yeah.
You talk about the immense amount of work that goes into going into every single parish and raising the funds to pay for a station, a dime and a nickel at a time. It can be a difficult task. And so we thought, well, we've completely eliminated that. So we received the check from the diocese, and then we went about letting the parishes know through bulletin announcements and pulpit announcements, not fundraising, but in the parishes that a station was coming without the fundraising piece there at the parishes. And that it was paid for, and all of that wonderful stuff. Station was bought, put on the air. 3 years later, it was off the air.
Wow.
No one else was invested in the station other than the bishop himself.
Yeah.
We were guaranteed one listener because we had one donor. Mm-hmm. When you have thousands of donors, you're guaranteed thousands of listeners. Mm-hmm. And then those thousands of listeners continue to grow because they're out telling your story because they are owners of that radio station. Mm-hmm. Annunciation Radio is blessed beyond measure in having thousands of families who support Annunciation Radio on an annual basis. And they are the owners, as it were, of Annunciation Radio. And we're all doing this together. And we're all very proud of it. We're all equally proud of it. I'm glad. I hope that the person who's giving $10 a month feels that it's as much theirs as it is mine, because I wouldn't be here if they weren't doing that.
Amen.
And I'm so thankful that it's thousands and thousands of people. And Mother Angelica would always say her fundraising model, keep us between your gas and electric bill, had a couple of purposes, but the biggest purpose was, or one of the main purposes was, that she could say no to anyone. So if someone came to her and said, Mother Angelica, I really don't like this program. I really want you to take it off the air and do this. She would say, no. And they would threaten her and say, I'll take my money away. She's, bye-bye, sweetheart. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of others. I will not be owned by a donor. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that kind of thing happens and that kind of power is wielded, it becomes difficult to stand up and do what you believe the Lord is calling you to do as an organization. Mm-hmm. And she never allowed that to happen with EWTN. And thanks be to God, we don't have to do that at Annunciation Radio either, though I would trust all of our donors implicitly. But here's the thing. We just don't have to worry about that kind of thing because our burden is shared by thousands. Mm-hmm.
So the majority of our guests last week for our Sharathon that was completely wrapped up last week were priests. So this need for parish participation, and that's really the point of the priests coming in and spending time on the air, because one, it's a call-in time for their parishioners to call in and to make donations at that point. But I know that they're making announcements in their own bulletins. Mm-hmm. They may even include it in the announcements at the at the end of Mass. Just reminding people that, please, if you're able to give, I'm going to be on the air at this particular time. And there's a fair amount of competition between they have fun with it because the various priests want to be, they want to bring in the most, the largest amounts of money. But the key thing is the parish participation. And I'm glad that you shared that story with the bishop writing the check. Yeah. Because he kind of doomed it from the start. If you don't involve the parishes, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, you've got to ask people to invest in it if you want them to be a part of it. And look, our greatest example, the greatest evidence of our priestly support, Mr. Finn is very aware of this. We made the decision a year ago to stop offering priests an hour of time on the air and offer them a half hour because we didn't have enough slots. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they used to come on for an hour at a time, which was glorious and wonderful things were done during those hour visits. We just don't have the ability to supply that anymore, because the number of priests who are willing to be on the air makes it so that we need to divide those hours in half to get everybody on. Yeah. So that's testimony to them.
It really is. And we all know how busy priests are and how many hats they have to wear, and it's for them to commit to an hour and not knowing if they're going to get a phone call or have to go, administer last rites, for example, or any of the parish duties that fall to them, which is everything. Right. So it makes a half hour makes it easier for them to participate as well. And you hear from really all of them how important Catholic radio is to them in their parish, and how important it is to their parishioners. They hear from them all the time in consultation, in conversation, in confessions, for example, how really the presence of Annunciation Radio in the diocese has made it has opened up that communication somehow a little bit more. They've got something that they can bring up with their pastor or make their pastor more accessible to them.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. And look, we're here to support the local parishes. We're here to support, in particular, the diocese, but specifically Bishop Thomas. We exist and we broadcast out of his good favor. because he allows us to do it and because we have his blessing to do it, and we're here to serve him. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. Catholic Radio does not exist in and of itself. It exists as a mouthpiece for the Catholic Church, which is in fact the bishop and those under his charge. Mm-hmm. And so we are thrilled that he allows us to be a part of that.
Well, the other blessing, if I've understood correctly, there are few bishops that are as involved as Bishop Thomas with their station. In other words, we're blessed to have a program. We have the Bishop's Corner here, and that's a wonderful aspect of our program lineup, because folks are actually able to ask our bishop questions, and he's able to speak to his flock on a weekly basis.
Well, and again, I'll give you an example. There are 118 dioceses in the United States of America. 188 dioceses in the United States of America. Nearly all of them have Catholic radio stations in them. Our bishop is on the air with us every week. Do you know what other diocese has their bishop on a Catholic radio station every week? No other. None.
Well, so my understanding was correct.
Absolutely. There are bishops who do monthly programs. There are bishops who have staff that do even weekly programs. But our own bishop not only is on our air every week, he takes our listeners' questions and answers them every week. Yeah. It's not him coming in. And forgive me, and some of the diocesan programs across the country, and certainly not ours or anyone close to us, some of them are boring. They're just giving stats and statistics and that kind of thing. No, our bishop comes in, and we learn everything that he's doing that week, not what he did, what's planned 8 months from now, but because he is recording that program for that week, we know what he's up to then. Mm-hmm. And his schedule is exhaustive. And then his sharing of his schedule is exhaustive. And I could not do his schedule. It would be exhausting. He's such a busy man and gives himself to his people. But then he answers the questions that come in from his own people. And man, he answers any question that comes in. And he's so fabulous with it and well prepared, obviously. But so faithful. We're very fortunate to have him. But that's unmatched.
And with that in mind, it's just a great opportunity to tell people how to get their questions in.
Oh, yeah.
Because we do have another session with Bishop Thomas coming up a week from Wednesday.
Yeah.
So looking forward to bringing your questions to him, and Ron Miller will read them off to him, and he will answer them right from the heart. But you need to send a question in. You can go to our website, artoledo.com, and just click on Bishop's Corner, and there's a template. Or you can just send it to bishop@annunciationradio.com.
There you go, artoledo.com or bishop at AR-Toledo.
I think it's Bishop at Annunciation Radio Toledo.
Okay.
I don't think that email is
that new one is. So Bishop at AnnunciationRadio.com.
Or use the template at ARToledo.com.
Now, if you have a question for me, and Ron, I don't even think you know about this, but if you have a question for me, I have a special email set up for your questions as well. It's idon'tknow@nowhere.com. And then you get an automatic reply, ask the bishop.
Yeah, there you go.
I would say call Dave, but he won't answer the phone.
Yeah. Ask the bishop. That's the better thing to do.
Thanks for joining us on Faith with Reasons today. Dave Vacheresse in studio now. Dave, we get to chat every morning here on Morning Offering, but we never really get to sit down and drill down on certain things. So I'm glad that you could join us for this show. I know you're a busy guy.
Oh yeah. But, well, last week I was busy. This week, not so much. So
well, comparatively, yes. None of us are busy now.
Yeah, right.
Like we were last week. But so many fine folks have come through here. And you've seen different radio station operations throughout the country and really kind of set them off on the right course at the beginning in many cases. But you've also seen changes in Catholic radio that we're seeing now. I think we mentioned at the beginning of the show how it seems to be more important now. Every year as more turmoil and division is going on around us, that solid rock foundation that is coming through your radio is more and more important.
Amen. And look, the church has been built, and we say this over and over again, church has been built on the blood of the martyrs for 2,000 years. Catholic radio, I would say one of the changes in Catholic radio in the last 10 years in particular is you see Catholic radio groups who are run by someone other than the founder. Like I'm not the founder of Annunciation Radio, yet I am the president of Annunciation Radio. And I had the great opportunity to work with all of these founders who started these stations some 30 years ago, some 25 years ago, some 20, in this case 13 years ago for Annunciation Radio. I could never match the sacrifice of the founder. I could never do that. Annunciation Radio needed the sacrifice of the founders, and so did the other radio groups. And now as they've gone forward, that sacrifice has been made. People like me can come in and run them, but we could never, ever, ever match the sacrifice of the founder and those families who were willing to come forward in the very beginning when no one knew what was going to become of this thing and take a risk and buy these stations and get them on the air. I remember I was talking to a group of station owner-operators down in Birmingham, Alabama at an annual event called the Catholic Radio Conference where all the affiliated station owner-operators come together. And I was telling the story of a couple that I had worked with. He had mortgaged his house to buy the first station.
Wow.
He had left his job at the post office. He had come over to start running the radio station. He felt a very clear call. In fact, Mother Angelica herself invited him to do it. He wouldn't mind me telling you, this is a group in New Jersey. And they were wonderful. He and his wife were absolutely wonderful. And they were willing to make that sacrifice. Thanks be to God. We had a couple of events. We raised enough money. He was able to pay for the station and release the mortgage that had been put on his house to pay for it. And when I finished telling that story, I had a couple come up to me, and the woman had tears in her eyes, and she said, "The Lord called us to sell our house." Wow. And move into an apartment, and we used the money from that house to buy the first station. It was then, at that point, a 13-station network that had grown from that 1 to 13.
Wow.
But the original one was bought because they were willing to sell their house and move into an apartment. I ran into another couple who had done exactly the same thing, very close to it. They had a beautiful, beautiful home on the beach. Condominium, luxurious condominium right on the beach in Florida. And the Lord had called them to sell that and move into the inner city with their family into a far different setting than what they had given up to buy their first station. And they were sitting with 8 stations when I talked to them. Wow. Now, the Lord always honored those sacrifices, and money was raised sufficient to allow those stations to operate without those great sacrifices after that. But it required that great sacrifice to get it done. And so when I talk about being involved in Catholic radio for the entirety of my adult life, I always like to point to people like Deacon Mike and Chris Learned, Deacon Rick Nelson and Catherine Nelson, and the many like them throughout our country who made sacrifices that are far greater than anything I can do. And I watched them, and I met them, and I worked with them. But I never did what they did in bringing in my own investment, making my whole, giving everything I had from a fiscal point of view to make a station possible. And many of our founders have done that.
And for those that are listening that don't know, the 4 that you just mentioned were the founders.
Yeah, our
founders for Annunciation Radio.
Yeah, Deacon Mike and Chris Learned, Deacon Rick and Catherine Nelson. They are the founders. They are the shoulders. They are the giants whose shoulders we stand on today. And thanks be to God, there are many, many like them throughout the country.
And thankfully, in most cases, there is a succession plan. There's a plan moving forward, because we have seen in certain instances where the founders just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, well,
They get older. They move, or they're just not able to do it anymore, and they have nobody to hand the reins to further that off. So thankfully, most stations have already really considered this, and where do we go from here, and how do we ensure that this continues beyond us?
Yeah,
which really we all need to do in any walk of life anyway. Who's going to take over for us?
And that takes me back to the story that I was telling about Mother and the check from Tom Monahan and the walking away from EWTN owning and operating these stations to this new model, which is actually the one that was given birth and grew Catholic radio throughout our country, stations owned and operated by local groups. Mother never cling, clang, clung, however you say that. She never held tightly to anything the Lord gave her. She always held it loosely and never claimed the possession for herself. So when it was time for her to move on and someone else to run EWTN, she was fine with that. She just went back to her monastery. So that's what's happening with these founders who came forward and made sacrifices that we will never be called to make. And yet at the same time, they didn't hold too tightly. They were willing to let it go because it didn't belong to them, even though they had made these great sacrifices and they knew it. So they handed on to somebody else very generously, very graciously, and then the story continues. But it never, could not, would not have never, and would have never worked without them. Would not have worked without them.
So what was your first station? And when was that?
So my first station that I ran outside of EWTN was a station in Reno, Nevada. I moved my family from Birmingham, Alabama. I was working at EWTN shortwave radio station, and we were working with a man to put an affiliated station, right as this whole thing was getting started, put an affiliated station on the air in Reno, Nevada, and his son was going to run it. So he had been working with Mother. He had been working with the team from EWTN shortwave. We were working out all the details of how to make this happen. He had listened to EWTN on shortwave during some drives across the country and just fell in love and knew he wanted EWTN programming available on a traditional AM station. So, again, working with him about all the particulars on how to make it work, training his son, everything ready to go. And about 30 days before the station was to go on the air, we got a call at EWTN. In fact, Mother Angelica got the call, and it was him. It was the principal there saying his son was going to the seminary. The son who was going to be running the station out there was going to the seminary, and did she or anybody else on the staff know someone who could run the station for him? And my name was raised, and that's how I ended up going from Birmingham, Alabama to Reno, Nevada to run my first station in January of 1997.
1997.
That station became a 40-plus station network. That's still, all those stations are still on the air today. Wow. And but it was all, I got to go out there because the Lord called the one who was going to run it into the priesthood.
Yeah.
And because of his call into the priesthood, I was allowed to be a part of that.
And you had zero experience.
Experience running an AM/FM radio station.
You were shortwave.
Yeah, I was shortwave. Programming was my area of expertise. And so I told the man, I said, his name is Doug Sherman, wonderful man of faith, a wonderful mentor for me. And I told him when he was talking about hiring me, I went out there and I said, Doug, I don't know anything about radio. Nothing. There are FCC requirements here. There are all kinds of things I don't know anything about. I know programming, but I don't know any of this other side. He said, Dave, do you love Jesus? I said, Doug, I love Jesus from the bottom of my feet all the way to the top of my head. He said, do you love the church? I said, same. I love the church. Absolutely love the church. He said, we'll learn the rest together. And we built a 40-plus station network.
Wow.
Yeah, and we learned. We both learned together. He didn't know any more than I did, and but we both gave ourselves over to it, and what a wonderful, incredible ride it has been since January of 1997 until now, however many years ago that is. Yeah,
that's a fantastic story, and I remember you sharing that previously, and I want to make sure our listeners got a chance to hear it because that's amazing. I mean, I'm on this program and I have no broadcasting. I mean, probably shows. Ron carries.
You're pretty polished.
Carries the water for this show, but no, it's just amazing that how you find yourself, involved with Catholic radio in the the most interesting of circumstances.
Well, believe me, I didn't think that was going to be where I was going. In fact, I thought my time with Catholic radio had come to an end. I was working at EWTN shortwave radio, and our second child had been born, and a third child on the way. And quite frankly, that can be somewhat expensive, and there's not a whole lot of money to be made in Catholic radio. And I thought the Lord was just calling me out. I thought my time in ministry was done, and I was going to go get a secular job. I was actively looking when this offer was made to me, and I really contemplated it. I thought, I had no plans to ever move from Birmingham, Alabama, where I had begun to raise my family.
And Reno, of all places,
and
too.
Reno, Nevada.
Yeah.
So EWTN shortwave radio is located on top of a miner's mountain outside of Birmingham. And I was driving down that mountain after work one day and coming up, it's pretty sharp curves going down a mountain, a dirt road mountain, by the way. And I sensed the Lord say to me, "Aren't you going to slow down?" I said, "No, I mean, I've driven this road before." And I said, even if I hadn't driven this road before, I would be pretty confident going at this speed. He said, "Aren't you going to stop the car and get out and make sure that this road continues along the other side of the mountain that you can't see?" And I said, "No, Lord, I'm comfortable with this road. I feel confident in those that have built it." And he stopped me. And he said, "You trust the people that have built this road more than you trust me." Every time you don't see around to the other side of where I'm taking you, you stop, get out of the car, demand that you're not moving any further until I show you the other side. And I repented, and I took the job in Reno, and I've remembered it ever since. God is a faithful road builder. I don't have to question. I just have to be obedient. So,
wonderful. Yeah, wonderful.
And all these years later, my goodness, the gift that it has been for me personally to be involved all over the country, literally in every state of the United States of America, including Alaska and Hawaii, by the way. I've been present for putting stations on the air over all these years, and what a blessing it's been.
So, Sharathons are your expertise.
I do some of those, yeah. I've done a few of those in my time. Yeah.
Well, but it's great. I mean, it's where the experience comes in is necessary. It's very, very, very helpful because again, we're listener supported. We're putting the hat out there, twice a year, asking for our operating budget, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important that if we don't get listener support, like you said, we can easily find ourselves off the air.
And I don't generally think of it as a fundraising tool. I think of it's kind of like these Medicare ads you're seeing. It's open enrollment time.
Oh, amen, amen.
And you're invited to get yourself enrolled, join the team here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe, as St. Teresa of Calcutta said, God's work done in God's time never lacks God's provision. So I don't worry about it getting done. I just wonder who's going to be a part of it.
Amen. Amen.
No truer words were ever spoken. Lead with love and follow Jesus. And
amen.
What do you have to worry about, right? Dave, it's been a joy. Thank you for spending this hour with us. It's a quick hour.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Wow. So, and next week,
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we're going to have Monsignor Charles Singler on. We're going to be talking about Advent.
That's
and then,
coming up.
Christmas coming up. Yeah, we've got the shortest Advent possible this year. So, and he'll help us understand all of that. Thanks for joining us on Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio. Happy Thanksgiving.